Have you ever noticed that the first time you finally chose yourself, you didn't feel free? You felt guilty. And here's the question I want you to stay with. What if the guilt you feel when choosing yourself has been lying to you? Let's stay with that feeling for a moment. Think about the last time you chose yourself. Maybe it wasn't something big. You simply needed to rest. Or you finally realized you didn't have the energy to say yes. You pick up your phone. You type, "I can't today." You read it again. Delete. You try again. A little softer this time. "I'm really sorry. Maybe another day." You stare at the screen. Finally, you press send. And then, you wait. They haven't replied. They haven't called you selfish. They haven't sounded disappointed. They haven't even had the chance to react. But something has already happened. You're already apologizing inside your own head. You're already wondering if you've disappointed them, if you've been selfish, if you should have just said yes. Before anyone else judged you, you judged yourself first. And that's something most people never stop to question. How can guilt arrive before anything has even happened? Most people think they already know the answer. They tell themselves, maybe this just proves I'm selfish. I don't think that's what it proves. I think that feeling has been following you for much longer than this moment. And if that's true, then the guilt you're feeling today may not have started today at all. And that's where we need to go next. Go back to the last time you chose yourself. It usually doesn't start with one big moment. It starts with hundreds of small ones. No single moment tells you to stop listening to yourself. It happens quietly, almost invisibly. You're having a hard day. Someone asks, "Are you okay?" You smile, "I'm fine." You need help. But instead of asking, you tell yourself, "I don't want to be a burden." Someone asks, "What do you want?" You answer, "Anything is fine." None of those moments seem important. They almost look like kindness. They almost look like maturity. They almost look like love. But little by little, something begins to change. You stop asking, "What do I need?" And you start asking, "What will make everyone else okay?" That's the moment many people quietly lose sight of themselves. Not because they wanted to, but because somewhere along the way, caring for everyone else started feeling safer than caring for themselves. And this is where guilt quietly changes. Not because guilt itself becomes bad, but because it can begin to mean two very different things. Sometimes, guilt is reminding you that you've acted against your values. And that kind of guilt deserves to be listened to. But sometimes, guilt appears simply because you're doing something your old patterns never allowed you to do. And if we never learn the difference, we'll keep apologizing, even when we're not doing anything wrong. And that's the difference we need to understand next. Can I ask you something? When was the last time you said yes, even though every part of you wanted to say no? Just notice the answer. You don't have to tell anyone when guilt is telling the truth and when it isn't. There's something we rarely stop to ask. What if not every guilt is trying to tell us the same thing? Imagine two different moments. One evening, you're overwhelmed. You're exhausted, and without meaning to, you lose your patience with your child. The moment is over. But later that night, you can't stop thinking about it. Not because someone told you you were a bad parent, but because Deep down, you didn't act like the person you want to be. That kind of guilt has something to teach you. It gently invites you to make things right. Now imagine a different day. A friend asks if you can help. But this time, you're already exhausted. You've been running on empty for days. So for the first time, you answer honestly. I'm really sorry. I can't today. Your friend understands. They smile. They say, no problem. Get some rest. Nothing went wrong. Nobody was hurt. Nobody was angry. But somehow, the guilt comes anyway. On the surface, those two moments feel almost identical. Your chest feels heavy. Your mind keeps replaying the conversation. You wonder if you've done something wrong. But underneath, they are asking two completely different questions. The first guilt is inviting you back to your values. The second may be inviting you back to an old pattern where taking care of yourself always felt wrong. The feeling may be the same, but the message isn't. Not every guilt is asking you to apologize. Some guilt is asking you to stop leaving yourself behind. And that's why, the next time guilt appears, don't ask, how strongly do I feel it? Ask, what is this guilt inviting me back to? My values? Or my old patterns? Because learning to tell the difference may be one of the most important parts of learning to choose yourself. The next time guilt visits you, it may feel exactly the way it always has. Your chest may still feel heavy. Your thoughts may still start racing. You may still wonder if you've done something wrong. Understanding everything we've talked about today doesn't mean that feeling disappears. But it does give you something you've never had before. A better way to listen to it. Imagine you're back in that moment. You tell your friend, I'm sorry, I can't today. A few seconds later, the guilt arrives, just like it always has. Before today, you probably asked yourself, why do I feel so guilty? Or maybe, does this mean I'm being selfish? But neither of those questions can tell you what this feeling is actually trying to say. So try asking something different. Did I actually hurt someone? Did someone feel disappointed? Did someone wish I had given a different answer? But did I truly act against the kind of person I want to be? If the answer is yes, don't push that guilt away. Let it show you what needs to be repaired. But if the answer is no, ask yourself one more question. Does this feel wrong? Because I'm finally doing something I've never allowed myself to do before? Maybe you're resting without earning it. Maybe you're saying no without apologizing for existing. Maybe you're making room for yourself in a life that always made room for everyone else. If that's what's happening, don't push this guilt away either. Listen carefully. It may not be asking you to become someone else. It may simply be showing you how unfamiliar self-respect still feels. The feeling may sound the same, but the invitation is completely different. One guilt invites you to repair what you've damaged. The other invites you to stop leaving yourself behind. And once you learn to tell those two apart, guilt no longer gets to decide who you become. It simply becomes one more voice, asking to be understood. But there's still one question left. Even after you understand all of this, why does choosing yourself still feel so difficult? That's where the final piece begins. A few seconds later, the guilt arrives, just like it always has. Before today, you probably asked yourself, why do I feel so guilty? Or maybe, does this mean I'm being selfish? But neither of those questions can tell you what this feeling is actually trying to say. So try asking something different. Did I actually hurt someone? Did someone feel disappointed? Did someone wish I had given a different answer? But did I truly act against the kind of person I want to be? If the answer is yes, don't push that guilt away. Let it show you what needs to be repaired. But if the answer is no, ask yourself one more question. Does this feel wrong? Because I'm finally doing something I've never allowed myself to do before. Maybe you're resting without earning it. Maybe you're saying no without apologizing for existing. Maybe you're making room for yourself in a life that always made room for everyone else. If that's what's happening, don't push this guilt away either. Listen carefully. It may not be asking you to become someone else. It may simply be showing you how unfamiliar self-respect still feels. The feeling may sound the same, but the invitation is completely different. One guilt invites you to repair what you've damaged, to make things right. The other invites you to stop leaving yourself behind. And once you learn to tell those two apart, guilt no longer gets to decide who you become. It simply becomes one more voice, asking to be understood. But there's still one question left. Even after you understand all of this, why does choosing yourself still feel so difficult? That's where the final piece begins. Maybe the next time it happens, you'll still feel guilty. You may still type, "I'm sorry, I can't today." And before you press send, that familiar voice may still whisper, "You're being selfish." Don't be surprised if it does. A pattern you've lived with for years rarely disappears after one conversation. But maybe, this time, you won't let that voice answer the question for you. You'll stop. You'll breathe. And instead of asking, "Why do I feel guilty?" you'll ask, "What is this guilt trying to tell me? Is it inviting me to repair something? Or is it asking me to go back to a version of myself who always believed everyone else mattered more?" That single question may not remove the guilt, but it may stop the guilt from making the decision instead of you. Because the goal was never to stop feeling guilty. The goal was to stop believing that every guilt was telling you the truth. Some guilt will lead you back to the kind of person you want to be. Listen to it. And some guilt will appear simply because you're finally making room for yourself too. Don't mistake that old pattern for the truth. Choosing yourself doesn't mean you've stopped caring about other people. It means you've stopped believing that caring for yourself is something you have to feel guilty about. That's where coming home to yourself begins. But understanding yourself is only the first step, because something unexpected often happens when you stop living the role people have always expected from you. The people who felt safe with the old version of you may not always know how to respond to the new one, and understanding that may be the next part of coming home to yourself. Before we part, take this sentence with you. Not every guilt is asking you to apologize. Some guilt is asking you to stop leaving yourself behind. But understanding yourself is only the beginning, because something unexpected often happens when you stop abandoning yourself. The people who were comfortable with the version of you who always said yes may not celebrate the version who finally says no. And that can make you wonder if changing was the right decision after all. They aren't resisting the real you. They're grieving the version of you that made their lives easier, and understanding that changes everything. That's the conversation I hope you'll stay for next. If conversations like this help you understand yourself, I hope you'll stay, because this conversation doesn't end here. It's only the beginning. Before you leave, I'd love to ask you something. Have you ever mistaken guilt for proof that you were doing something wrong? If today's conversation reminded you of something in your own life, I'd love to read your story in the comments.